Hello, everyone. Welcome to Where to Find Sponsors, Proven Strategies to Get You Sponsored. My name is Ken Unger. I'm the president of Charge, a sponsorship consulting firm. And today we're going to talk about the art and science of finding sponsors through prospecting. Today I have two members of our Charge team with me, Eric Beadle and Efren Amaskita. Uh, Eric,
Yeah, so nice to meet everyone virtually. I'm part of the Charge team. I'm one of our coaches and consultants. I've been involved with the sponsorship space for between 10 and 12 years, which is hard to believe. And it's something I'm passionate about. And I look forward to hearing from all of you as we progress through this webinar, some of the challenges that you're facing, and look forward to possibly working with you all. I will pop on. I am going to pop off during the webinar, but I will be back on towards the end to answer any questions.
Efren.
Hi, everyone. Welcome in. I will be in charge of moderating the chat and the Q&A function. At the end, we will have a Q&A, so feel free to add in your questions through that. And if there's anything that I can answer throughout the webinar, I'll happily answer anything I can. But then if there are questions for Ken and Eric at the end, I will hold them off until then. And like Eric, we'll both pop off here and we'll give it back to Ken. We'll see you guys at the
Mhm.
Q&A.
Yeah, we'll see you in a bit.
So thank you, Efren. Thank you, Eric. So I want to encourage you to ask any questions that you have. Use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. Also, I would encourage you to use the chat. And right now, what I'd like to know is tell us a little about your organization. How do you come to sponsorship? Are you a sports team, an athlete? Are you a nonprofit? Share a little in the chat about who you are and where you're coming from. We have a motorsports team looking for funding. And I'm sure we have participants from not only all over the US, but from many countries as well, because sponsorship is one of those universal forms of marketing. Uh, in 2025, it's been estimated that sponsorship worldwide is a $90 billion market. I want to share today the secrets of great sponsorship prospecting with you because I want everyone on this webinar to be a part of that $90 billion market for you to find the sponsors that you deserve. So you can download our free deck template. I'm going to have a QR code and a web address a little bit later in the webinar. I would encourage you to download our free deck template. It is the basis of any sponsorship deck that you would send to a prospect. And we wanted you to have that as a gift for attending our webinar today. So, hey, everyone. I mentioned before, my name is Ken Unger. I'm not only the president of Charge, but I'm also an author and a recognized expert in sponsorship. I founded Charge in 2006, so we've been at this about 19 years. Charge is a sponsorship firm, and our clients are both large and small, and we work in a variety of different markets. We work with nonprofits, with sports teams, with arts and entertainment properties, and with individuals. You could tell if you've attended our webinars in the past, or you'll probably tell by the end of this webinar, I love to talk about sponsorship. And because I love to talk about sponsorship, I'm often getting calls from reporters who are writing stories about the sponsorship market. And I'm always happy to share the good news about how sponsorship works for sponsors and properties. So those are the things that I want to share with you today. But even before Charge, I wanted to share where my journey started with sponsorship, and that was 28 years ago. And it's hard to believe, but I entered sponsorship through the world of sports marketing. I was the chief marketing officer and head of business at IndyCar, and I was responsible for basically the entire business side of the sport. Well, that included sponsorship sales. The only problem is I had absolutely no background in sponsorship. I had a background in marketing, but as you all know and are coming to know, sponsorship is an entirely different thing than marketing. So, as you could expect, someone with no experience in sponsorship made every single mistake possible. So, I'm going to talk about those mistakes because I had some really great coaches and great mentors who were able to help me convert those mistakes into very valuable lessons. And how I applied those lessons are what I'm going to share with you today as we talk about where to find sponsors. So, applying those lessons, I was able to turn mistakes into $50 million in sponsorship deals closed during my career. And about 2 years ago, I turned those lessons, those hard earned lessons, into what's called the sponsorship success method, a coaching model for new and struggling sponsorship sellers. I'll tell you a little about the sponsorship success method towards the end of this webinar. But the question that I usually get at the top of any webinar is, will this webinar work for me? And so I turn to others who have attended our webinars and who have been taught the principles that we're going to talk about today. Will this work for you? Dave, who's a professional bass fisherman, who was taught exactly what you're going to be taught today, said you're going to learn a lot of information that's very valuable. And the most important thing is it'll last you a lifetime, because once you learn how to sell sponsorship, it's something that you can apply over and over and over for yourself, for your organization, for whomever. So I want to start with a little definition because I want us all to be on the same page, because sponsorship does have a lot of jargon. So I want to break that down. I want to make it simple for everybody. So what is sponsorship? So sponsorship is a relationship, and that's really important to keep in mind. It's a relationship between a sponsor and a property. In many cases, if you're selling sponsorship, you are the property. Where a sponsor provides resources, that resource can be cash, it could be product, or it could be services that you'll get in exchange for giving your sponsor access to your audience or promotional opportunities for the sponsor. So now that we have some definitions under our belt, let's get to the meat of this webinar. So where will you find sponsors? Now, another bit of sponsorship jargon is the term prospecting. We talk about prospecting all the time. And prospecting is merely identifying and contacting potential sponsorship partners. So it's the process, the beginning of the process of finding a sponsorship partner. So much of what we're going to talk about in this webinar is, again, the art and science of prospecting. Learn prospecting, and you'll never have a problem identifying who are the right partners for you in your sponsorship journey. So one question I want to ask, and if you could share in the chat, what's been the biggest issue that you have faced finding sponsors? You know, we hear often, and it's the reason that we selected this topic, is it's often a confusing thing, especially people who are new to sponsorship, about where to find sponsors. So what's been the challenge that you've had? Securing the initial conversation. That's really an important issue. I mean, so many people are frustrated by getting so-called ghosted, or not being able to get that first conversation where you can make that pitch. That could be very frustrating. We'll talk about tactics for you to get that initial conversation, so you could put your best foot forward and make your pitch about why you'd be a great sponsorship prospect. So there's certain things to keep in mind before you start prospecting. So step one is identifying the sponsorship offering type. I want to talk about what that means, but it's really important that you start with this as you go through the process of identifying your prospecting. So you're identifying who are those potentially great sponsorship partners. So generally, there are three types of sponsorship offerings. There's one where there's just a single pool of sponsors. That is, all your partners are called sponsors. Now, again, those who've attended previous webinars or know me really well, I'm obsessed with pizza. So I talk about a hypothetical event that's looking for sponsorship called Pizza Fest. And so if Pizza Fest decided its type of offering of sponsorship was one pool or just everybody was a sponsor, people would just be called a proud sponsor of Pizza Fest. Now, I want to focus on the next two types of offerings because these are really important for you to get under your belt before you start identifying potential sponsor prospects. One is determining if you're going to offer different levels. So levels are, for example, you're looking for a title sponsor. This would be true especially if you're an event. You might, for example, want to have a title sponsor of your event, such as The Charge, my company, The Charge Pizza Fest. Or you could have the next level down, a presenting sponsor. So you can have the XYZ Pizza Fest presented by Charge. So this is really important, and we'll talk about the reason for that in just a minute. You might also divide your sponsorship offering into categories. Many people do this to organize their sponsorship into different products or services. It's often easier to talk to potential sponsors if you do that, because the sponsor can get their head around how they integrate into your event, your program, your YouTube channel, your nonprofit. So it helps you organize. So, for example, if Pizza Fest decided they were going to offer an official consultant category, then there'd be then Charge would be the official consultant of Pizza Fest. Now, why does this even matter? Well, if you establish categories or levels, that's going to give you a leg up in organizing how you identify potential prospects. So, for example, if you knew that at your event that your audience really wants Wi-Fi access, but you don't necessarily want to pay for it, so you would then create an official Wi-Fi provider category. It would do several things. It would be a source of cash because you would charge an official Wi-Fi provider for the honor of being a sponsor of your event. But also, you would ask that they provide in-kind support, that they would actually provide Wi-Fi on site to your audience. So that particular sponsor is building goodwill with your audience because they're not only the official Wi-Fi provider getting promotional benefit, but they're giving value to your audience. Now, from a prospecting perspective, this is going to help you organize who to contact. You're going to contact internet providers, telecom companies, Wi-Fi hardware manufacturers. Same thing applies if you decide to create an official soft drink. You would know from that you're going to build a prospect list of anyone who makes soft drinks. So again, knowing this at the beginning will help you build a better prospect list. It'll keep you organized during the prospecting process. Second thing is to define your audience. We talk about this often. In fact, I think it's safe to say that every single webinar that I've ever given on sponsorship, and I've given dozens of sponsorship webinars, we talk about defining the audience, because I often say the three most important things in sponsorship are audience, audience, and audience. And the reason is the sponsor wants to see its potential customers in your audience. So defining your audience of who you talk to, your event attendees, your followers, your subscribers, your donors, all of those things are part of your audience. And it's important to define your audience in the language of the sponsor. We'll talk about in a minute why it's important in prospecting, but you're going to do this regardless because of how important it is to the sponsorship selling process. So we often talk about audience in a few different ways. One is describing your audience demographics. And that's just a marketing word for things like the age of your audience, their gender, where do they live, what's their household income, or their education level. You're going to talk about the psychographics of your audience. These are things like their interests, their behaviors, their lifestyles, their values. A really important part of psychographics, for example, are the hobbies of your audience. And then finally, You're going to talk about the buying habits of your audience. What products or services do they typically use or buy? And in what time frame are they looking to buy them? Now, you could use either surveys, the social media insights and analytics tools. For example, if you have a professional Instagram account, you have analytics in that describing your audience. If you have a website, you have free access to Google Analytics, which tells you all these different things about the people coming to your website. Use all of these tools, surveys, analytics, all these insights to collect the data about your audience. Why does this matter? I mentioned that your sponsor wants to make your audience their customers. So, for example, if you know that your audience is in the market for a new car within the next 6 months, you know, aha, I'm going to put new car dealers on my list of potential sponsors. I'm going to reach out to new car dealers because I have the data that I know that my audience is in the market for a new car. So again, it's leaving breadcrumbs, and we'll talk more about breadcrumbs in a little bit. But that's why this matters, because your sponsors want to make your audience their customers. So let's go through the process of finding sponsors. So I mentioned before, you have categories. So you're going to build lists of brands or company names within each category. So there are various different ways that you can go about doing this. You could do it, for example, if you know that you have the official soft drink category, you know who are the soft drink manufacturers. Now, if you run out of leads from doing that, you say you do a Google search to try to find all the soft drink manufacturers, you're going to do a few other things to try to find potentially soft drink makers that you haven't heard of before. You're going to look for companies that are already sponsoring similar properties to yours. So if I have a pizza festival and it's located in the city of Indianapolis, I might look at who are the soft drink makers who are sponsoring a Pizza Fest event in New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago, because I know that these companies believe that the pizza eating audience is their customers. I especially like to look for companies that are launching new products or entering new markets. It is really hard and really expensive to launch a new product. And sometimes it's just as hard to enter a new market, say a company that's moving to the Pacific Northwest for the first time. A sponsorship can help short circuit the marketing process and address the challenge that sponsor has of getting their name out, of creating brand awareness. So I'm looking for companies that are either launching new products or new to a market, because these companies are in need of sponsorship to raise their brand awareness. I'm looking for companies that sell products or services that your audience wants. So, for example, I mentioned that new car dealer because you have data that says that your audience is going to soon be in the market for a new car. But you also want to know all the other things, the products and services that your audience wants, because you have evidence that your audience can be the customers of those particular sponsors. So you start to build sponsorship prospect lists that contain the names of companies that sell the products and services that your audience wants. And you also look for local businesses looking for community engagement. These are often the businesses that are members of local chambers of commerce, local networking organizations. They're looking to engage with the community. And so if you're a nonprofit, for example, you know that these companies may be receptive to a message about a corporate partnership with your particular nonprofit. So it's really important. We talked about defining your audience because it's really important that you don't do this. And I've seen this happen all too often. So, for example, the category might be the official beverage provider. You need to know the profile of your audience, for example, their age. Because, for example, if the company that you might be approaching is Red Bull, you should know Red Bull doesn't really care that much about the audience that's potentially containing boomers or Gen X or Gen Alpha, because they may be too old or too young for the Red Bull customer demographic. So Red Bull's customer demographic is essentially anywhere from 18 to 35. So that pretty much puts them in play for younger millennials or older Gen Z members. So again, if your audience doesn't contain this, you're wasting your time in prospecting, and you're wasting the time of the potential sponsor and even looking at the email where you're sending your sponsorship deck. So it's really important as you build your prospect list that you keep this in mind. So what are the other techniques and sources that you use to build your list? You're going to use industry lists. You're going to use LinkedIn, and you're going to use trade associations. You can find industry lists in many Google searches. We've begun talking quite a bit about using AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, all the Gemini, Microsoft Copilot. There's no shortage of AI resources, and you can use these to help you build industry lists. I love LinkedIn as a great source of building my prospect list because it does a few things. It not only contains companies that contain the types of companies that you're looking to seek, but it also has the people who work for them and potentially even the people who handle sponsorship for those particular companies. So I love using LinkedIn for that. You could use the free version of LinkedIn, or if you really want to get serious about it, subscribe to the LinkedIn Sales Navigator product. It might be a little pricey, but it's well worth it to get you the information that you need in building your prospect list. I also like trade associations. So, for example, if you're looking for potentially chiropractors to put on your list, look for associations of chiropractors because they generally list their member companies. You can find the one that fits the profile of your audience to help you with an outreach to that particular sponsor. I always recommend networking with colleagues and previous sponsors. As you build your list, nothing's better than word of mouth to build that prospect list. You're going to find out a few things as you talk to these particular resources. You're going to you're going to leverage their experience, for example, and find out, no, these particular sponsors or these particular companies are really not good prospects for you because, or the opposite. You're going to find out, yeah, these companies really love to sponsor your type of organizations because of X. So as you build your list, networking with these colleagues and previous sponsors are so important. You're also going to research companies sponsoring competitors. Now, this is a double-edged sword. I really like doing this because I get a really fine-tuned sense of what sponsors find value in my type of event. Obviously, my competitors have a similar event of mine. Well, I'm kind of building a hand-picked list of knowing who has that proclivity to sponsor an event like mine. So that's really good, especially if they have bandwidth or to sponsor other events, or an event might be a competitor of yours, but not in the same market. So if the company is in both the sponsor's in both markets, you have a ready-made approach because you know that sponsor likes a particular kind of event. Now, I mentioned it's a two-edged sword because sometimes a sponsor might say you're too late. I only have bandwidth to do one sponsorship, and I'm working with your competitor. But I always say it's worth a try because if you don't step up to bat, you have 100% chance of striking out. So at least I have used this in the past, and in some cases quite successfully. So let's talk about some tools that you would use. I mentioned LinkedIn Sales Navigator just a minute ago. I really like that a lot for searching for decision makers. And generally, as you're prospecting, you want to go, there's an expression in sales. Many of you with sales experience would know the expression, I want to go to power. And so, for example, you might go to the CEO of a particular sponsor, especially in smaller companies. That might be difficult in doing it for larger companies, but generally, those salespeople who go to power generally get to the right decision maker. If not the CEO, usually like to go to the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer. If that's not available, I like people with sponsorship in their title or partnership in their title. And again, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is going to help me identify that because we've gotten to a point in the history of social media, especially with LinkedIn, that everyone likes to have their LinkedIn account up to date and accurate. So that up to date and accuracy is going to help you as you search for prospects. You might want to check out some sponsorship databases. Some of them are free, some of them are limited access, and some of them are subscription. I mentioned two here that we have used and seen in the past. We really like them. These are not the only ones, but something like Sponsor United or Sponsor Pitch will give you a sense of who's sponsoring what. Generally, what I like to see is not so much identifying potential sponsor partners that would be right for me, but I want to look in these sponsorship databases of who's already spoken for, because then I can, if I see that someone is well represented in my particular type of sponsorship, I might choose to not approach. Or even if I do approach, I know ahead of time that there might be clutter. So I like to use these sponsorship databases because I like as much information as I can possibly generate about my prospect. I love Google Alerts. Google Alerts are a free, easy way for you to either monitor brands that you're interested in a sponsorship relationship or categories, because every morning at 6 a.m., Google will send you an email with all the things that it has found crawling the night before that are relevant to your Google Alert search terms. So I really like that. It's free, keeps me up to date. I use it every morning. My search term is, as you guess, sponsorship. So every morning I get served up fresh information about sponsorship. But this is a really valuable tool that you can use in the prospecting process. I like a website called MediaPost. Most of their newsletters are free, but MediaPost is dedicated to a tremendous variety of marketing. And so I use MediaPost to keep my finger on the pulse of who's marketing what. Because if I see that a brand is launching a campaign, if a company is launching a campaign and they don't have a sponsorship partner, I have a ready-made hook to talk to that particular prospect. Your email might say, hey, I saw you just created a campaign to market your new product. Have you thought about my particular opportunity that can help you achieve greater brand awareness, et cetera, et cetera? So I use MediaPost to do that. Generally free. All you have to do is sign up for the newsletters with your email address. Social media. I use social media all the time to spot sponsorship announcements. Everyone is proud of having sponsorships. Generally, you don't see sponsors looking for sponsorship opportunities on social media. But again, it's a question of you knowing what is hot with a potential sponsor so you could plug in your opportunity to what's hot in the mind of the sponsor. And again, social media is a free way for you to do that. And with the Sponsorship Success Method, our group coaching platform, we help our members leverage as many free resources as humanly possible, because who doesn't like free? Now you're going to find the right point of contact. I mentioned LinkedIn just a minute ago. I also mentioned you're looking for the right roles. So the first role that I'm looking for, if I'm not going to Power, if I'm not going to the CEO or the CMO, I'm looking for someone with sponsorship in their title. The manager of sponsorship, the sponsorship director, the vice president of sponsorship. I'm looking for someone who day to day is dealing with the sponsorship opportunities of their particular company. Next, some people don't call sponsorship, they call it partnership. So I'm looking for people with partnership in their title. And if you can't find either of those, marketing. Because 9 times out of 10, the sponsorship opportunities are in the marketing department of a particular company. So you'll have a better chance of finding the right person with that particular role in their title. Infrequently, you might find the public relations department handling sponsorship, but I have found in my experience that these 3 types of roles are most useful. And then there's leveraging LinkedIn. I also like websites and leveraging that through Google search and press releases about what's important to that sponsor and what are their priorities. And of course, I mentioned AI, which is very much becoming a game changer in identifying prospects. Once you find a prospect, I've often been asked, how do you find their email? Well, the good news about LinkedIn is you can often find people's email addresses through LinkedIn, especially if you're already a contact of theirs. But even if you don't, there are two different ways that you can go about doing this. One is to subscribe or use the free version of a service like ZoomInfo or Rocket Reach. They'll often have the precise person you're looking for with their actual email address. Now, the fallback to that, if you don't have access to that, is find through Google search the email protocol of a particular company. For example, our email protocol is chargesponsorship.com. Well, you can then make an educated guess as to the name protocol in front of the company protocol. So, for example, the typical protocols are K. Unger or Ken-Unger or Kenneth-Unger or Unger-Kenneth. And what you could do is put one of them in the to line of your email and put the rest of your guesses in the BCC line of the email so your prospect doesn't know how much you've been guessing. And odds are that one of them will work and get your email to the proper prospect. That's if all else fails. But there's also an old school method, and that's to pick up your phone, get on your mobile, and call the company. Often you will get a gatekeeper. It may be tough to get an email address from that gatekeeper, but that is a way that many people end up finding, even if it's to an info or generic mailbox of a company, is getting into the prospect, is simply call if all else fails. And then there is the very last resort, and that's if a company uses the dreaded sponsorship portal. That is a way to upload your sponsorship opportunity to a particular portal. That may be a way for you to contact your sponsorship prospect. Now, the next steps, research each prospect. I mentioned you want to know about them. You want to know what's important to them. You want to know that they're looking for your audience. Then it's important that you customize your deck for each prospect. We've had webinars on this. We talk about customization as a process almost as important as audience definition. It's right up there because everyone wants something that addresses their challenge. If I'm a sponsor, I don't want your generic sponsorship deck. I have a problem I come to work to solve, and I want to know that your particular opportunity will solve my problem. Then once you know that and you have your prospect name, you have your prospect company, you have their email address, you have your deck, you have your cover email, let it fly. And then often you may not get a response on the first try, is to follow up. Hey, I recently sent you this great opportunity to put your company in front of 5,000 motivated potential customers. Do you have 5 minutes to chat with me about this opportunity? So we've given you a lot of information in this webinar. And in a few minutes, I'm going to answer questions. Eric Efron and I are going to answer your questions and give you even more. But before that, I want to share with you how our Sponsorship Success Method members have applied the things that we just taught you and so much more to find sponsorship. So I want to talk about our members, Dave, Tyler, and Angie. These are 3 people who came to us who were either brand new to sponsorship or struggling with sponsorship, and what we did that helped change the trajectory of their sponsorship journey. So Dave, I mentioned at the top of this webinar, is a professional bass fisherman. He struggled to get responses from prospects, just like the question that we had earlier in the chat. People were offering him products and not cash, and he needed cash, and they were trying to push him into affiliate marketing programs. At the Sponsorship Success Method, we coached him what to do. And with that, Dave so far has landed deals worth in excess of $145,000. Now he's able to move up the ladder in professional bass fishing. Dave didn't set out to be a professional sponsorship salesperson. He did not want to do that. He does not want to do that. But sponsorship was the way that enabled his dreams, and the sponsorship success method was the way to enable Dave's dream. Same with Tyler. Tyler went from being rejected by sponsors to being respected by sponsors. In fact, through the coaching process that we have, the sponsorship success method, Tyler's going toe to toe with vice presidents of marketing about sponsorship in a good way, in a collaborative way, in a way that Tyler is able to speak to the value of the sponsorship opportunities that he's presenting. And so far, Tyler has closed over $50,000 in sponsorship deals. Now, Angie is a nonprofit festival promoter. I spoke to Angie at the beginning of this year. She was unsure how to price her sponsorship. She did not customize anything that she sent to sponsors, and she always presented gold, silver, and bronze level, which again, we talked about customizing not only your deck, but customizing your offerings, because no one wants a generic opportunity. After our coaching, she learned to price her sponsorships with confidence and deliver value that sponsors want. And so far, she's landed over $310,000 to date in sponsorships. Again, didn't set out to sell sponsorship. For her, her love is the festival that she promotes. But sponsorships are helping make that dream come true. And so far, 100% of our members who follow the system that we teach have sold sponsorship after 6 months. So how do they do it? Just want to take a few more minutes to show you how they do it and then get to your questions to get you on the path to achieving your dreams through sponsorship. So the first thing is through our online course, on-demand videos that discuss every aspect of the sales process. We have over 50 videos, each less than 10 minutes each, 12 different modules covering the entire sponsorship process. There will be nothing that you don't know about sponsorship after you go through these in-demand videos on computer, or we even have an app for your mobile so you can learn about sponsorship on the go or whenever you're ready. Now, the secret sauce of our sponsorship success method is group coaching. That's where we help you overcome obstacles. You're on a Zoom call, just like this one, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, where our coaches are providing real-time advice. How do you overcome challenges? This sponsor won't get back to me. What do I do? I've run out of prospects. How do I create more prospects for my prospect file? I'm using the sponsorship, the pricing calculator, but I'm not quite sure how to address X, Y, or Z. We never let our members be stopped by challenges, and group coaching is the way that we help them overcome it. We have a private online community, much like a private Facebook group, but just for our sponsorship success method members and just for sponsorship. It's always available. You always have access to us. Our members use this most frequently to post as many decks as they want to get critiqued. So if you're having a problem with your deck, you don't quite know if it's pitching right, you don't know if it's resonating, people post it to the community, and one of our coaches takes that deck, critiques it on video, and gives you all the feedback that you could possibly want, probably more than you wanted, to make your deck as good as it could be, to have the professional decks that you need to close deals. We have an online pricing calculator. We don't want people to ask for too much because you'll get a no. We don't want people to ask for too little because you'll get a quick yes. We want them to ask what their sponsorships are worth because most sponsors know this already. We want to put knowledge in your hands to give you a leg up in negotiating with sponsors. So we give you access to our online pricing calculator where you enter all the data about your event or your program or your nonprofit or your sports team. And out of this calculator comes the algorithm that we've developed and that we use professionally with all of our clients to come to the right price for your sponsorship. And then we give you templates and guides because we don't want people wasting their time. We want you to have access to the best cold call email. We want you to have access to what a good sponsorship deck looks like, what a bad sponsorship deck looks like, what happens when someone tries to push you into an affiliate marketing program, what are your model responses. We recently added a nonprofit sponsorship policy guide, and we added a 40-page ebook on prompts for artificial intelligence, for AI, to help you use that really valuable tool for your sponsorship search. And we update this all the time based on the member feedback we get from members. So if you were to take everything that I just mentioned, the online course, the group coaching, the pricing calculator, and you paid street price for all of this, for access to it, you probably spend almost $28,000 on it. What I'm about to tell you is through our group coaching process, you pay a lot less than that. So we have two different plans that our members can take advantage of. Our members have told us that they want flexibility. Some of them have told us they want flexibility. So we recently created a monthly plan where our members pay $375 a month for access to everything I just mentioned, and it's cancel at any time. This gives you flexibility. This lets you kick the tires of the sponsorship success method to see if it's a right fit for you. But most importantly, it gets you in the door immediately. Many of our members choose to just to enroll for the annual plan because the annual plan will save you $500 over paying monthly for 12 months. So in the first year alone, you'll save $500 by enrolling in the annual plan. This means you don't have to worry about renewing monthly. Our members just worry about finding sponsors, and we show them how to find sponsors. We alleviate that worry. So my question will be, where will you be in 6 months to a year? Many of the people who don't sign up for the sponsorship success method end up continually looking for free webinars, for looking for access for information on the internet, and unfortunately, they're no further along than when they started. But in 6 months to a year from now, with the sponsorship success method, you will be much further along in this process. So I want you to have the opportunity to use our resources for free, for us to review your deck for free. So if you were to scan this QR code or go to the web address, we'll set up a 15-minute meeting where one of our coaches will look at your sponsorship deck and give you frank advice. That's in thanks for attending our webinar today and really participating in what we have to share. So I want you to also feel free to either enroll monthly, enroll in the annual plan, or if you have any questions about what we do with the sponsorship success method, to schedule a call, and we'd be happy to discuss this further with you in order to ensure that we're both a good fit, that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Feel free at the bottom of your Zoom dashboard. There's a Q&A tab, and feel free to go ahead and ask us any questions that you have about sponsorship.
All righty, we're waiting on our first one here. Looks like we got one in. So this person's asked or said that they are struggling to get cash sponsors. Many only offer products or discounts. Do you have any suggestions on how they can better position themselves to get cash sponsors?
Yeah, great question. I mentioned that was Dave, our professional bass fisherman. That was his issue, but we see this a lot. And a lot of sponsors that we call endemic sponsors, those are the ones that are in your industry. So for Dave in the fishing industry, it was manufacturers of boats and fishing tackle and such. They're going to want to offer product because product for them is a lot cheaper than cash. But here's what you do. First, you got to know your value. You have to know that your sponsorship is worth X. Our members, for example, do it through the pricing calculator, but however you do it, you need to know my sponsorship opportunity in the value that I'm giving is worth $10,000. So if you know, for example, they're giving you $2,000 worth of product for a $10,000 sponsorship, you know you have $8,000 to make up through cash. And you can have that frank conversation with your prospect. Go, I'm really flattered that you want to give me product. But I know based on what we're giving you, the value of the assets that we're giving you, the exposure, the tickets, the hospitality, whatever you're giving, I know that's worth $10,000. And I would say a more fair offer would be the product that you've offered and $8,000 cash contribution, something like that. But it's important if you know what you're worth going in, you'll know that you're being offered less than you're worth.
Yeah, Ken, I'm going to go a little bit off of that as well. And,
Yeah.
I think it comes back to your phrasing and how you're positioning it to a potential sponsor. So, the emphasis is you're always leading with the value and not what you need. And not to be too blunt, but a lot of sponsors don't necessarily care what you need. They want to know what's in it for them. So instead of identifying, hey, I need $15,000 for this event, it is, here's how we can increase your brand's awareness among this target market. So changing your phraseology, if you will help steer towards, more cash offerings than just in-kind type of opportunities. The other thing is, I think you really need to quantify and understand who your audience is and the influence you have among that demographic. So the more that you are able to show the data and the reach and the connection and why you're a conduit, the more that they might see, you know what, this is worth my investment. So this comes back down to knowing, demographic information, the buying habits of your individuals, and the psychographics. So the more that you can show that, the more you're showing value, which then leads to sponsors being more interested in the true investment.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. Questions, we'll answer any and all of them. In fact, we'll stay on until there are no questions. So who else has a question?
It looks like we just got one in here. What is your strategy around activation cost of a partnership? For example, 30% applied to the activation, or should it be 30%?
So thank you, Ryan, for the question. I think, as I understand it, is that the way you're structuring your sponsorship, you're promising some activation idea around that. For example, that you're offering to do a product display or something of that nature. If I got that wrong, just tell me in the chat I've got that wrong. But I'm just going to assume that from that, that's what you're asking. You want to ask for 100% of your activation. So as part of your rights fee, you certainly don't want to be offering people something at a loss. So in terms of what your pricing is, you either don't offer an activation that's so expensive that you can't possibly recoup it with a rights fee. But I certainly wouldn't recommend, if you're offering something of value. Thank you for the feedback, Ryan. And you mentioned, sorry, for every $1, what percentage are you applying to activation? I know my costs going in, so I don't necessarily price it as a percentage. So if I know that my cost of performance, the total cost of performance, so if I'm paying for signage, I know that cost. If I'm paying for display, I know that cost. So I know that the assets in my package are worth X. On the other side of it, I'm creating what is the value of it. I'm using things like the pricing calculator, or even there is like one rule of thumb that we talk about where people do cost plus. So the cost of performance plus, and it's usually a multiple of 2 or 3. So if you know that your total cost of performance is $10,000, which is inclusive of all the activation costs, as a rights fee, you need to charge, or if it's 10,000, you need to charge 20 or 30,000 if it's 2x or 3x. But under no circumstance am I pricing any sponsorship that doesn't have a sufficient margin based on the value. So if I can't get $10,000 for that, I'm taking inventory out of the package because I'm never going to run a sponsorship package at a loss. So I'm just going to offer less because I know based on the value, that's what the sponsor wants to pay. But on the cost on my side, it's got to be less than that value because I need to make a profit on that sponsorship to contribute to my overall my overall organization. Thank you, Ryan. If that requires further explanation, I'd be happy to pursue that offline with you. But that's a great question. Thank you. Any other questions?
It looks like we have another one that has come in. I struggle to get sponsors to respond. Do you have any suggestions on the outline of the email or what I should include?
Yes. So, the typical reason that someone doesn't respond to your email, take aside from the fact that everybody's busy, they might not see it, they might be on vacation. Like if you divorce all the usual explanations that someone doesn't respond to your email, the most frequent reason that someone doesn't respond to your email is they don't see value in the opportunity, which obviously is an enormous problem. So you want to be sure so your follow-up question will be, okay, so how do I ensure there's value in there? You've done your research. You know, for example, if they're looking for brand awareness, that you've nailed brand awareness in your not only email, but in your deck. If they're looking for lead generation, you have nailed that in your email or your deck. That research is going to show you what pain, what challenge that your sponsor has. And just think of how you respond to emails. Also, think about how many emails you get. I know that when I have a problem and I get 50 emails in a day, but I see that one problem that's going to answer my most pressing question, that's the first one I respond to. I certainly don't ignore it. I prioritize it higher in the list. So often what happens is when you don't get a response, that's why. So there's very few ways to cure it after the fact. So what I like to do is before the fact, ensure that I've done my research, I've customized my deck, I've customized the email, so I know they have to respond because they want us. Everybody wants to solve the problems that are ailing them. Eric, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to it. Aside from that too, I think you need to be cognizant of the structure of your email, and that means what's the length of it? Are you writing too much? Is there enough information in it? I know personally, for me, the longer an email is, the more I tend to scan or even delete if I don't see something of value in the first sentence or two. So I want you to consider the structure of it. You're not telling the whole story in this email. You're either looking for a conversation, you're looking for something, back to Ken's point, the research that stands out to them. Uh, in addition, consider your subject line. So avoid a salesy type of approach and think of something that resonates with them. Think of something, I always say, think of something that's going to sound like it's coming from within their organization or internal. That's not meant to be misleading, but it's meant to be trigger this response that this is an email I need to open. So that's how I would do it. The other aspect of it is, I'm very big on leveraging your network. So whoever you're reaching out to, whatever company or organization, do you have someone in your network that you can leverage so that when you send your email, you say, "Hey, John, I was referred to by Ken Unger about X, Y, and Z." So now it's a warm lead opportunity. They're aware of at least who Ken is, and out of a favor for Ken, they'll be receptive to answering your email.
Great answer, Eric. Thank you.
It looks like that is all of the questions, unless anybody else has anything they would like to ask.
Well, looks like we'll give you the gift of time. We're ending 5 minutes early, but just one thing in close, and that is as sponsorship sales coaches, among the things that we do at Charge, I could share with you the most gratifying thing that we do is getting people to yes. And so hearing about the stories from our members like Angie, like Dave, like Tyler, when they come back to us and they say, "Oh my gosh, the things that you taught us actually worked." And because we know they work, but now they know they work and they're able to convert that into sponsorship partnerships, which help fuel their dreams financially, which help create promotional value, because that's the other aspect of sponsorship. They're getting promotion from their partner. That's the most gratifying thing that we do. So if we can help you fuel your dream to find the sponsors and partners that you deserve, reach out to us. Um, Eric and Ephraim and I are always available to have a chat with anyone who wants to talk about sponsorship, because we love it, because it's important, and because it's important to you that you came and shared your time with us today. Thank you very much. Wish you success in the remainder of your day. And no matter what, we wish you all sponsorship success. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.